Well, hey, friends, here we are again. I almost considered canceling doing this today, but then I thought this is only the second in this series I wanted to get rolling, and it's a bad idea to just sort of abort something on the second episode. So I said, man it up. Okay, tough it up. Let's get in here and do it. And then what I did is I went browsing on YouTube for problematic videos. And I went looking and I found a 1-minute video. And I said, hey, this is great. This is manageable. I can do this in, I guess, 1 minute. It'll be quick and easy. Except there were two little problems. Number one, it's actually 1 minute and 46 seconds long. You can trust a creationist to lie to you. And then the second problem is it's John Sanford. So I've got to talk a bit about John Sanford, who's not an easy subject. He doesn't fit into the nice little bins that we usually like to throw creationists in. But hey, I'll give it a shot. Let's see what he had to say in this 1-minute video.
If the evidence is so compelling for evolution, why doesn't the world know?
Here's our first problem. The big question is, if the evidence for evolution is so compelling, why don't we know? But we do know. I mean, you can't see it, but you see this bookshelf behind me? That's only half my collection in here. In front of me is where I tend to put all my evolution books. And there's an equal-sized shelf stuffed full of books right in front of my face that are all about evolution. The evidence is all there. So why don't you know? Haven't you been reading the right books? That's the problem here.
So actually, Scripture gives us a hint, chapter 1 of Romans.
Well, this is not a good start. He's going to cite Scripture. He's not going to talk about the evidence. He's not going to talk about the science. I know he's got some interesting stuff, some interesting wrong stuff that he's published. But that's not what we're coming at it from in this video. It's pure evangelical Christianity. And that's very sad. I don't care what the Bible tells me. I don't accept the Bible as an authority. So, all right, he's already lost me.
Says that unrighteous men suppress the truth in unrighteousness. And so actually, it shouldn't be surprising for Christians to see that important truths that point to Christ instead of to Darwin, would be suppressed in this world.
All right, do I have a problem with this? Yes, I do. So basically his whole argument is there is a conspiracy against me. That's the sum total, is that there's a conspiracy. They're trying to silence Christian thought, which is a ludicrous claim in the United States of America, okay? There are churches on every street corner. I've mentioned before, there's like 16 churches in my teeny tiny little town alone. The dominant Republican Party is largely a Christianist party. No, there's no conspiracy here. There's lots of Christianity gets thrown at me. We just came out of the Democratic National Convention, and every single day it started off with a prayer, and more specifically, a prayer to the Christian deity. So, no, this is absurd. This is not a good place for John Sanford to start. He could have started with other angles that would have been more interesting, but no, this one just, why?
And so what you'll find is that anything that supports anyone who voices support for evolution, their message will be in the mass media. It'll be received sympathetically within classrooms and within academic institutions. And any evidence that is that undermines evolutionary claims basically is ignored.
Here's another thing. He claims that the evidence for his position is there. It's in the scientific journals. As I just mentioned, I'm surrounded by scientific books, and there's a library right next door, so I've seen all this stuff. And no, it's not there. The stuff to support his views is not in the scientific literature, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's crap, okay? It's just more conspiracy theory nonsense. I'll also mention that, this is a guy who has published a book that's gone through 3 editions. How can he, with a straight face, get up there and say that his position has been silenced? It is true it doesn't get into the schools, and that's because it's garbage science, but we'll get to that.
And so you actually have to dig for the evidence. The evidence is there, it's in the scientific journals, but it's not proclaimed. So the evidence is really, really exciting, especially in my field, genetics. Just layer upon layer upon layer of evidence pointing away from evolution.
Okay, he claims there is layer upon layer upon layer of evidence in genetics pointing away from evolution. Again, no, this is not true. And in fact, his position, his argument, which I will get around to it, is in defiance of large quantities of that information. So basically what he's got this gigantic stack of information in the scientific literature, and he is pulling out one page of it and sort of distorting it and claiming, oh, well, you see all that other stuff? It supports my point of view. It's complete falsehood.
It's very, very clear the genome is designed, and it's very clear that it's degenerating. And so you just have to add 2 + 2 to realize that requires a creator.
Okay, that was relatively short and painful. He's claiming that there's all this evidence that supports his view, and he's claiming that evidence supports intelligent design, and further it supports the idea that all of life is degenerating. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about his actual science, which isn't here. But yeah, you can go read his book if you must. It's not very good. It's called Genetic Entropy. And the entire gist of his argument is that evolution and natural selection cannot generate new information. You can't get an increase in information. And further, that all it can do is cause a degeneration of information, so that over time, everything is going to decay. Got it? Okay. I'm not going to deal much with the science here because it's been ably dealt with by other people. I'll mention that Joe Felsenstein and Michael Lynch have dissected it, and I will include a link to their article down below. The flaws in their analysis, in John Sanford's analysis, is that he's got a model, for instance, in which there is no recombination, there is no sexual reproduction, everything is haploid. And if you run that model, well, then you accumulate deleterious alleles. He also downplays the significance of beneficial alleles. So it's like he's got this little combination of things that he can tweak just right, and he can make the whole of evolution fall apart in his hands. And he uses that as an argument against evolutionary theory. He basically says it's impossible for it to happen and that it will degenerate. There's a few problems with his argument. One we've already run across. He's very religious. His entire worldview is coming from evangelical Christian theology, not the science. He was doing credible scientific work. He was a horticultural scientist at Cornell University. It seems like he was never involved in teaching or anything like that. He was kind of a technician, a highly ranked technician at a research station. So they're okay. He's got some credentials there. But he gets a lot of things wrong about evolution, and when he steps outside his narrow domain of applied genetics, he degenerates. Yes. Okay, so anyway, the problems are it's strictly an evangelical Christian idea, and you don't even need to get into the details of his theory to see the problem with it. One is that he claims everything is degenerating and that the human race is going to decay into non-existence sometime in the near future, presumably about the time when Jesus returns. When you actually look at his arguments, he's a young earth creationist. He claims that his genetic evidence says that humans first evolved, or first created, I should say, about 6,000 years ago, and their demise is imminent. Does this sound familiar at all to you? This is standard creationist dogma. He has juggled the data to make it fit into the chronology of evangelical Christianity. So that's not very impressive. That's not very exciting. The other thing is that since he claims that everything is going to be degenerating at this rapid pace, and it's going to be, we're all going to end when the apocalypse arrives here and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't really work. Because as I mentioned, he's got to ignore layers and layers of information in order to make his hypothesis seem reasonable. For example, if the lifespan of the human species is roughly 6,000 years plus a few, we've got strong evidence that humans have been here for about 200,000 years. Were they degenerating all that time? What's taken us so long to go extinct, if his model is correct? That's kind of a key piece of the basic information that he hasn't accommodated in his hypothesis. Of course, the other thing is we can just look into the past. We have genomic sequences from Neanderthal 40,000 years ago, not 6,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, and we have compared Neanderthal genomes to modern human genomes. Is there any sign of the degeneration he is confident has been taking place? No, there is not. It's just not there. Neanderthal had roughly the same number of genes that we do. And when we look at individual genes, they're of roughly similar complexity, roughly similar functionality. They haven't gone anywhere. How did that happen? Okay, you could argue that Neanderthals did go extinct some 40,000 years ago, but their line has continued. We still got traces of them in us. You can't argue that humanity began 6,000 years ago in a spontaneous event that had no relationship to other primates and be taken seriously. That doesn't fit with the scientific information. And that's basically all John Sanford is. And as the title says, he's a 1-minute apologist for creationism. That's kind of a disgraceful position to be in. Okay, I'm going to let you go at that because I have a heck of a lot of work to get done today. But yay, I met my duty and I talked about a crazy guy who's got some really bad science under his belt. Mission accomplished, I guess. As I mentioned, I'm going to try and do this every week. We'll see how it goes. And meanwhile, I will entertain you with my list of patrons scrolling off the screen. These are the people who are helping me out, give me a little financial support, and you can do that too. Just go to my Patreon page. I'll include a link down below, and you can keep this going. Thanks.